So, as promised, I'm putting up a video here to help students who, because of the uh, severe monsoons today, missed the class. So, some pointers basically to guide you through how to conduct a morphological analysis on a word using the methodology developed by Jeffrey Leach, Deutscher, and Hugenrath. Uh, we know that all words that belong to the open word class may be morphologically analyzed by looking at root words. Now, these can have both free stems, which are root words that can stand alone and make meaning, and bound stems. Bound stems are those stems which have fallen into disuse, which can no longer stand alone and make meaning today. They used to mean something at some point in time, but today they are no longer trendy or no longer in fashion, or they have fallen into, as we say, in disuse, into disuse, right? So a root word is a basic word to which affixes are added. Now these affixes, as we have seen in our earlier lectures, can be added before the root word or after the root word. If they are added before the root word, they are called prefixes, and if they are added after the root word, they are called suffixes. So a root word very often is also a word in its own right. Let's take the adjective lovely. Now, in the case of this particular word, love is the root word, right? And it can function either as a verb or as a noun. Now, if I were to use this adjective in a sentence and say, these gifts are lovely, and the word lovely is underlined for you. For example, in your question paper, you're asked to analyze it morphologically. How will you go about this? The first thing you have to do is identify the root word as love, which is the basic form of the word. In order for meaning to come about, we can pare the word down into its very basic form. In this case, it is love, which stands alone and makes sense independently on its own, and hence it is a free stem. Now to that we add the affix ly. Because this affix is added after the root word and not before, this affix is called a suffix. Now suffixes, as I have told you, are of two types. We have derivational suffixes and inflectional suffixes. What is the difference between the two? I think in one of my earlier classes, I have also explained that in the classroom, but I will go over that just in case someone has missed out on understanding the concept. A derivational suffix is so called because with the addition of this suffix, the word class changes, right? So for example, a noun or a verb such as love changes to an adjective with the addition of the derivational suffix ly. What does this mean? This is very simple, right? The word love by itself, when it is employed in a sentence, for example, I was overwhelmed by their love. Here, the word love performs the function of a noun. Now, this is what Leach, Deutscher, and Hugenrath are constantly saying. And this is something that the prescriptive model of English grammar does not teach students. And I believe that school students should be taught the descriptive model of English grammar so that they are not confused. Because in English, the way it is used, function is most important, as Leach, Deutscher, and Hogenrad keep reminding us. Right? Form comes next and meaning comes last. So the same word, love, spelt as Love, can function as a noun in this sentence. I was overwhelmed by their love. But I could also use the same word in another sentence to say, children love ice creams. Now here, love represents an action, an emotion, or sometimes a verb can also represent an occurrence, right? It can refer to words which, verbs can refer to words which talk about something that has happened or occurred, something that is a state of being, something that is an action, right? So in this case, children love ice creams. The same word, spelt in the exact same way, functions as a verb. But the function of the word love changes with the addition of the derivational suffix ly, to an adjective. Now again, there is a myth. Very often teachers at the primary or the secondary or the junior college level, very often, of course, they are well-meaning teachers who want to make it easier for the students to attempt examinations and score well. So very often teachers tell the children that if any word ends with the letters L and Y, it is more often than not an adverb. So now kids have it in their head that if a word ends with ly, it must be an adverb. But the word lovely, for example, here does not function as an adverb. So these kind of tricks and tips cause more harm than good. It is necessary to learn the mechanics of how a language works by understanding the structure of words, which is also called morphology. So when you understand how words are structured, how words are formed, how function is to be prioritized, how form comes next, and how meaning comes last of all, you will figure out that there are words which end in ly which are not always adverbs. For example, the word lovely. Now the word lovely here functions as an adjective, right? Because it is describing the gifts. We are saying these gifts are lovely. So here, the word lovely qualifies the noun gifts, right? Let me give you another example to show you the difference between derivational and inflectional suffixes. Now, derivational suffixes are so called because they help you derive another word class. They change by the addition of the derivational suffix. The word class changes from a noun to a verb, or a verb to a noun, a verb to an adjective, or an adjective to an adverb, or vice versa. So, let us take another free stem, front, Front. Okay, and we say that the doctor or the surgeon operated on the frontal lobe. Now, when you take the word frontal, Frontal, you see that front is the stem. It is the root word. And it is a free stem because the word front makes perfect sense by itself. The suffix al, which comes after it, which is added after front, again changes the form class from a noun to an adjective, and hence this is also a derivational suffix. What then are inflectional suffixes? Inflectional suffixes change a noun from the singular to the plural by their addition. So you can add an S to change the noun form, let's say computer, computers. You can change the number of a noun, like for example loaf to loaves by adding VES. You can change ox to oxen, bacillus to bacilli, radius to radii, so on and so forth. But by doing this, we are not changing the noun to a verb or an adjective or an adverb. Therefore, because this kind of a suffix only changes the noun from the singular to the plural and does not change the form class of the noun from a noun to a verb, or a verb to an adjective, or an adjective to an adverb for that matter, we call this an inflectional suffix. Inflectional suffixes are also added to adjectives in order to give the comparative and superlative degree. For example, large, larger and largest are all three adjectives, right? In spite of the fact that ER and EST are inflectional suffixes added to the root word large, which is also a free stem. However, all three, large, larger, largest, remain adjectives which describe something, and therefore we call this the second variety of inflectional suffixes. Inflectional suffixes are also added to verbs to change the tense of the verb from the present tense to the past tense. For example, we say reject, and we can also say rejected, right? Or I can also say she is rejecting the application. So whether it's an ing or it's an ed or an en or an s or an rejects, she rejects us every year, right? Now s here is the third person singular form, but it is also an inflectional suffix because it is making the verb agree with the subject according to the subject position. Now in English, as all of you know, there are 6 subject positions: first, second and third person singular, first, second and third person plural. So these subject positions are vital for you to understand subject verb concord and agreement, right? Having said all this, there is also another important concept that needs to be explained to you, and that is the concept of the bound stem. Leach, Deutscher and Hugenrath also explain that there are certain words which have bound stems as their root words today. These, for example, let us take the word ject, J-E-C-T. Ject means to throw, right? Now, at some point in time it meant that, but somewhere by itself the word has fallen into disuse. It is no longer being used. It is no longer trending, right? It is no longer in vogue. Today, however, the word ject, that bound stem, makes sense to us only after the addition of affixes. That is, additions made to the root word, which is a bound stem in this case. So you may add prefixes and create reject. You may add suffixes and create rejected, right? Whether that suffix is an inflectional suffix, as in rejected, and this word is used as a verb in a particular context, or is this used as a noun? For example, she passed on all the rejects to the poor family. Rejects here, the rejects, here is a noun used in the plural. So, depending on the context, we can decide what the function of the word is. Is it functioning as a verb or is it functioning as a noun? Now, another important thing that we have to keep in mind, therefore, is that the root word must be identified always after a great deal of thought has been put into the context. The context of that discourse has to be kept in mind. So, for example, if the word is election, the root word will be elect and ION will be a derivational suffix. But if the word is electricity, the root word will not be elect, right? The root word will be electric and we add the derivational suffix ity in order to create the noun form of the word adjective electric. Similarly, we have several other bound stems. An example I would like to share here is the bound stem dict, D-I-C-T. Dict means to say. It is a root word that is a bound stem, which by itself, standing alone, does not make meaning today. However, we very often create words like dictate. The word becomes, a bound stem becomes a verb, starts to function as a verb only when an affix is added to it. In this case, a suffix, a derivational suffix to create dictate from that bound stem. Then when we change the verb dictate to the noun dictation, we add TION to it and drop that last E. We could just bracket that last E in dictate to show that it is being dropped and TION is being added. More in the next class. Thank you. See you around.